I'll call this meeting of the Washington County Board of Supervisors to order. Supervisor Conrath is on Zoom, and Supervisor Pridemore is excused. I think most of you know her husband had a stroke a while back, and she's dealing with hard times. So we'll rise for a moment of silent prayer for her and her husband, and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The minutes from our last meeting are in your packet. Are there any corrections? There being none, we'll mark them as accepted. Our first item is a Veterans Day recognition. Is Kurt here for that?
Nick Stewart.
Pardon?
Nick Stewart is here.
Nick Stewart?
It's my first time here. I'm guessing I just speak right here?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Thank you, everyone. I have some certificates that I will reference as I'm speaking. I'll just pass one this way. They're examples, and I'll pass one this way. All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for making the time and allowing me to speak before you all today. I've met and know some of you, and for those of you that I haven't met, my name is Nick Stewart, and I'm here today to discuss the importance of the newly created Veteran Day Community Recognition Program. I served as an active duty infantry Marine from 1999 to 2003, and I was part of the invasion force into Iraq in 2003. For the last 10 years, I've worked in the mental health division of the Milwaukee VA Hospital as an administrative analyst. Most of that time, my office has been located at the 125-bed inpatient treatment facility, where local veterans in our community in the southeastern area of Wisconsin spend an average of 6 weeks going through treatment for a wide range of mental health and substance abuse issues. In my experience, one of the main reasons that many veterans spin their wheels and fall into a dark hole after getting out of the military is because they lose their sense of service and camaraderie. It was only recently that I realized that this isn't just a veteran issue. After they discharge from military service, every American could benefit from this program. Service to one's community is what reignites and strengthens the soul. This last Veterans Day ceremony at the Tower Heritage Center, which some of you were at, and if you were there, you know it was a windy and brisk day to say the least. The speaker and longtime veteran of our community, John Klimas, said, and I quote, "Veterans Day is not for veterans alone. When we served our country, we did not serve to fulfill personal interest. We served the national interest of the United States of America. And that is why this day isn't for us veterans alone. It's a day for the entire country to celebrate its freedoms," unquote. Over the last few years, especially after COVID hit the world, many Americans have gotten less healthy and have started to develop a victimhood mentality. It's time to flip that script here and cultivate a gloves-on and not hands-out approach to life. We can do this through connection, growth, and service. The connection piece are the certificates that are being passed around, where a veteran recommits to their service to their local community by honoring a fellow community member that did not serve in the military, but still embodies many of the tools and traits that veterans gain during their military service. Those two individuals then make a commitment to hold each other accountable and grow in a positive way together. This could include anything from healthy eating or more physical activity. Anyone reading the tea leaves right now in our country can see that a big push to make America healthy again is coming, and it's coming fast. When more of our fellow residents of Washington County get into the mindset of being a better version of themselves every day by focusing on their physical, mental, and spiritual well-being, we will surpass other communities and become the gold standard for the Make America Healthy Again movement. This year, I've set the groundwork. I've worked with 2 businesses in our community, the Gym WB and Schmidt Century Farm. One place where I sweat and do hard things, and the other where I get quality food for my family. The owner of the Gym WB is Jackie Vasquez. Jackie is the person that I gave my certificate to this year. You can view this on my Facebook or Instagram pages, or read about it in a recent article that was published in the Daily News. So where do we go from here? My hope, with the support of leaders, many of which are in this room in our community, that we plan a multi-day event next year around Washington County, where veterans can share their spotlight with someone in our community. Together, we can all grow through planned physical events, education on healthy eating led by a group of our local farmers, and volunteer our time with a wide range of things such as at a senior center or simply just picking up trash at a local park. Then we can all come together and celebrate our recommitment of service for the next year to our community. This ripple effect of this will not only strengthen Washington County today, it will almost certainly guarantee the next generation will learn these traits so they can build off of this and keep it rolling for many years to come. Thank you for your time.
And thank you for your service. Would you like these back?
No, that's okay. I have plenty. Hold on.
Okay.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is a Samaritan update from our county executive.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In your packet is a summary document of the Samaritan sale. In the last several months, we've been completing the transition over to EOM. Effective last month, Matt Furno, as many of you know, and attended his final day and retirement at Samaritan, and that was in October. And so we thought it was appropriate in November to come to you with kind of a final summary of the financial, at least a sales summary. What you're looking at in front of you, if you'd all be willing to take a look at the spreadsheet version, I'll just walk you through from top to bottom how the sale worked. As you can see, the total purchase price was $1.646 million. That price is laid out in really a couple of different ways. First, there was an initial down payment, so to speak, from the buyer of $500,000. Then, in addition to that, if you go towards the bottom portion of the document, or I should say the middle portion of the document, you see there's 3 additional payments, each of those in the following 3 years, 2025, 2026, and 2027. Those payments come with interest at 7.5%. And so they reflect, that is how you get to the $1.6+ million number. Essentially what we were trying to do, and as you might recall from conversations that we had at the time in closed session, we were trying to help provide for some liquidity for the new buyer, as there is a gap in time in the first several months when they aren't actually bringing in any income, because that income's coming to us as the county and the former owner. So this gave them some of that flexibility. At the same time, you'll see in the next line, the county also had some expenses related to the sale. Some of them planned, some of them worked into the sale price. The first is, and this was mentioned again in closed session, was the broker and closing costs. Those were roughly $250,000, just over that. Those were anticipated. And then finally, on the bottom of the page, an explanation of what we've called a $300,000 retention incentive. If you recall, a lot of the conversation was around one of our key priorities with whoever we sold to, keeping them here in West Bend for the long term. This payment schedule is intended to do exactly that. Essentially, it gives them dollars The way that these payments work, just so you're aware of this, and this will tie to the last piece in the middle on the far right side. The way that these payments work is in January of every year, dollars due at the sale from the buyer, EOM, that $350,000 plus interest will be due to the county in January. In March, then the county will, invert that. In January, the county will pay the incentive of $75,000, and then in March, we will get the payment from EOM. As you slide to the right side of that middle portion of the document, this explains why. The county debt payments, we still have outstanding principal and interest due from, I believe it was a 2009 remodeling project of approximately $2.6 million. The payments coming from EOM in 25, 26, and 27 will go to offset those debt obligations, which was our largest hurting point, so to speak, those annual payments. So as you can see, there will still be a small balance that has to be we have to come up with in order to close out that debt on an annual basis. Those will be conversations that will need to begin as part of the budget process. And even sooner for 2025. However, the goal was met in order for us to be able to leverage down that principal and interest cost. So there are documents that are quite literally about that thick that lay out the totality of the sale. We have a number of open records requests for them, some in this room. We're happy to get you those if you're very interested, but this is the top line kind of simplified thumbnail sketch version of how that sale went in terms of dollars and cents. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
At the very bottom, working capital obligation, you have 1, 2, 3, but there's not 4. I take it that got cut off. There's a January 15th, 2028 payment?
Aaron's nodding his head yes.
Okay.
Correct, it got cut off.
Any questions? Supervisor Krebs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since we are carrying a note for them, has the property actually been conveyed to them at this point? Or is this more like a land contract?
I believe it has been conveyed, Brad, yes?
Okay.
Yes.
With that, I'm assuming we are first position mortgage on the property?
It is a mortgage. Is it first position? It's the only position. There's no other mortgage.
I'm just wondering if the new owners would start to seek additional borrowing for the property and stuff, what type of position we'd be in compared to others. So
we can do some research on that and get an answer to you as well.
Okay. The second question then, since it has been conveyed, when it was county property, it's my understanding county controls our own zoning of our property. Now that it's not owned by the county, is that subject to West Bend zoning?
Correct. It is subject to West Bend, yes. It's institutionally zoned, so there isn't an issue there, but if they were to try to do something else, it would be something they have to get approval from the city from.
Subject to West Bend zoning?
Correct.
Comprehensive planning, everything like that?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Anyone else? Discussion? Questions? There being none, we'll move on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is tax deed parcel T1-0097. Who presents you?
Sure. Can you turn my mic on?
I can do that.
Sure. So the first tax deed parcel and item B, the second tax deed parcel, these are just redemptions. The individuals who had previously owned these properties paid their taxes, interest, and penalties in full to the treasurer's office. So we're recommending deeding these back to the prior owners.
I need a motion and a second. Can I have a motion and a second? We'll do the first one first. Supervisor Krebs, Supervisor Gallitz. Any discussion? vote electronically or voice?
This one can be voice.
We'll have a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. The next one, motion and a second, please. Supervisor Hartwig, Supervisor Bossert. Any discussion? There being none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It passes. The third is a little bit of an oddball. Attorney Stern dealt with that one directly. Can't you turn it on yourself?
This property is an owner-occupied single-family home, and as such, it falls under the new tax deed repurchase laws that went into effect in March of this year. And so we had to deal with this one just a little bit differently. The reason you don't find materials regarding this particular property in your packet is because my office had to research whether or not under the new law we could, in fact, allow this repurchase to go forward. The county was provided with a check that covers the outstanding taxes and penalties and so forth that were due. And after conducting some research and taking a look at the new statute, we believe that we are in a position that we can, in fact, ask the board to go ahead and authorize this property now to be redeemed by this individual. Michelle Carderas is her name, and that would be my recommendation for the evening. I can tell the board as well that the new law, it's called Act 207, which went into effect in March of this year, is currently under review by the legislature as well. There may be some changes coming to it after the first of the year that clarify certain aspects of the law, but we will be bringing to the board an ordinance change for our code that addresses Act 207 and the requirements of properties that are repurchased that are owner-occupied single-family homes. That'll be coming to you soon. But at least as of tonight, I feel comfortable in advising the board that you can go ahead and approve the repurchase.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or discussion? Oh, motion by Supervisor Schwab, second by Supervisor Vespalik.
No, he has a question.
I know. There you go.
Just to confirm, you said that the current owner did pay with a check and she fulfilled all the back and a penalty?
I have copies of the
Okay.
checks in the file here.
Okay.
That is my understanding.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? There being none, we'll voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Next up is Resolution 34, commendation of the Office of the County Attorney. Can I have a motion and a second, please? Supervisor Shadron, Supervisor Schultheis. I could turn your mic on.
Whereas on November 6, 1969, the Washington County Board of Supervisors created the Office of Washington County Corporation Counsel via Resolution 20-69-70, and whereas the board's decision came in response to the county's rapid growth and the increasing demand this growth placed upon the office of the Washington County District Attorney, who served as both part-time district attorney and corporation counsel at that point in history. And whereas many prominent members of the Washington County legal community appeared before this esteemed body on that date to speak in favor of establishing the Office of Corporation Counsel, including Attorney Clyde Schlamer on behalf of the Bar Association, Attorney Tom O'Meara of the O'Meara Law Firm, Judge M.L. Meister, Judge Tom Miriam, Judge Robert Stoltz, and District Attorney Richard T. Becker. And whereas the County Board later enacted 1998 Ordinance 20 on December 8, 1998, changing the name of the Office of Corporation Counsel to the Office of County Attorney to better describe the purpose of the office, that being to serve as the county's primary legal counsel. And whereas in its 55-year history, the Office of the County Attorney has proudly served in this capacity, Now therefore be it resolved that the Washington County Board of Supervisors pause in its deliberations to commend and pay tribute to the office of the County Attorney for 55 years of meritorious service. Be it further resolved that on behalf of all citizens of Washington County, this body does herewith extend to the office of the County Attorney heartfelt thanks for many accomplishments and successes of the office through the past 55 years. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the office of County Attorney as a token of appreciation on the part of this board.
We'll do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Next is Resolution 35, authorizing the Washington County Geographic Information Systems Department to provide GIS services to the city of West Bend as part of the Washington County Shared Revenue Grant Program. Supervisor Bossert, Supervisor Vespalic. Do we have any questions? Oh. Supervisor Bossert.
Oh, I'm in first? Okay. So I want to extend a thank you to the city of West Bend, their alderman, their mayor, their administrator, and everybody involved with this. I think this is a win for the taxpayers in West Bend. Now, $75,000 a year may not sound like a lot of money, but over 10 years, that's going to be $750,000. Over 20, that's going to be $1.5 million. When we add in pay increases and benefits that would have been paid out, this could easily be saving them $2 million over the next 20 years. This is money that the city of West Bend can now put towards other uses, including putting it in their capital budget. And honestly, I hope this is just the start, and that the county and the city of West Bend are going to find more ways to work together over the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Kelling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a fellow West Bend supervisor, I would concur with everything that Mr. Bossert has just said. Our ability to work together with the city of West Bend and shrink the size of government throughout both of our branches of government would be extremely helpful to the city in a city that has its share of problems, and we are here to help. That's what we're here to do. So I really encourage the mayor and the city council and their administrator that, let's work together. Let's find ways to share services and reduce costs of government for all involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comment? There being none, we'll vote on this electronically. This is a simple majority vote. Did you get Supervisor Conrad? It passes unanimously. Next up is Resolution 36, the 2025 budget adjustment. Motion and a second, please. Supervisor Kelling, Supervisor Hartwick.
Fire away. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hopefully everybody's had an opportunity to review this item. As you know, we do biennial budgets, so we are in an off year. For those of you who are new, this is the first time we've ever done what I'm calling a budget repair resolution, and the staff squirms when I say that, but that's the phrase I like, so that's the one I'm going to go with. But what we're really looking at here is, you can see in your packet the spreadsheet on the second page of this particular document. what I'd like to draw your attention to here in particular is the very bottom of that first section under levy reductions. The interest on investments in particular and health insurance savings are the two big items that really brought us to you today. And I just want to commend our entire administrative team, Aaron and our HR department and finance. Most of you in this room, with the exception probably of Brian Krebs, don't know this, but when I got to the county 11 years ago, we had a health insurance fund that was about at zero. And we were talking about 50, 60, and 70% increases in costs to employees and the employer because they had literally run the entire fund dry. Now we are on the other side of the bell curve, and we have significant surpluses. And it's allowing us to do some pretty amazing things. In addition to that, the way that we've budgeted, again, credit to Aaron and the finance department, the way that we've budgeted interest on investments has been very conservative, not counting our chickens before they're hatched, so to speak. And you can see that's a pretty substantial number. Again, when I first got to the county, we had almost no investment income. We had all of our money in CDs spread all over the county. And to be honest with you, it was not FDIC insured. So if we would have lost it, we literally would have lost it. So it is a huge accomplishment, and that staff in particular, Margie Hammers and her team, need to get credit for putting us in a position to be able to come in front of you today and have a discussion like this. Now, with that being said, as you can see above that, there's a number of onesie, twosie kind of changes that are happening really to help get us what you see on the bottom half of this spreadsheet. And that is we start first and foremost with looking at the property tax levy. Everything starts with the people of Washington County and reducing the amount of the levy that you had approved as part of the biennial budget. So $150,000 reduction is how we saved it best for last on this document. Then as you work your way back up the document, you can see a number of things. First, debt service. We've been talking for quite some time about the remodeling of this building, moving the constitutional officers towards the Justice Center, making some security improvements, moving different components of the PAC over here. What this debt service will allow us to do, these dollars here, it'll allow us to pay for the principal and interest of the debt for doing all of those long-term improvements without raising taxes. So that will cover those things. It is also intended to cover a future expansion or remodeling, I guess I should say, of the gun range, which has been a conversation that's been going on and on and on for several years now. And it will also allow us, if you choose to approve it tonight and then subsequently the debt, it will also allow us to continue the replacement of lead laterals. Most of that will remain now in the city of Hartford and in the city of West Bend, but this would allow us to do that by borrowing for county highway projects and then shifting the dollars that otherwise would have gone to county highway projects over to continue to get that lead out as fast as we possibly can. So once again, borrowing, I think this is the 5th or 6th time since I've been with the county that we've borrowed dollars, but we have not raised property taxes to pay the principal and interest. We've done it by living within our means. Continuing to work your way up the document, there's a significant cost of living adjustment. What we're seeing in counties around us and our 10 comparable counties is COLAs are somewhere closer to 3% this year than the 2% that we budgeted. This brings us in line with everybody else, which will hedge against future drastic changes to our compensation plan. Further up, putting permanent funding towards 2 significant programs that we've started recently. And when I say permanent, let me tie it directly, and I ask you really to hold us accountable to this, tie it directly to that investment income. While investment income is doing well, these are the types of investments that we can make, both in conservation and heritage program, as well as our Heart and Homestead program. If the investments go down after the next biennium, I think those should be some of the first things that we look at making adjustments to. But in the meantime, both programs have, I think, been very, very successful, and this will be a way for us to continue that success. And then finally, doing some housekeeping, our jail medical contract has gone up rather demonstrably, as you can see. This is an expense that we actually anticipate is going to continue to go up. It's just very, very expensive, and we're seeing it in counties around us as well. So long and short of it is, this is, while other places, once again, are having conversations about new taxes and new fees and all kinds of things, we're finding ways to reduce tax collections, pay for debt without raising taxes, living within our means, and still doing some pretty innovative and exciting projects. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions or discussion? Supervisor Gallitz.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that overview, Executive Shulman. I just had a few questions, I guess maybe about the prudency of the interest on investments. You said we were conservative, which is good, but we've been in a 12, 15-year extraordinary run, and in no time in anybody's life here or previous history have we seen a run like this. It's not going to be sustainable. So if we're conservative there and we're saving or we're shifting the interest, what about next year or the year beyond? I'm concerned that we might be giving too much away, and guess what? Then we got to pull from our general fund, because that's our only option. So I just want to make sure that we're being cautious of next year and the next biennium, because I don't think we're going to see. Everybody's projecting we're maybe 6-8% annual return versus double digits that we have been seeing. So I guess my question is this prudent, this amount, or should we hold some of it back?
So you can see Aaron Dahl's head nodding incessantly in agreement with you. We had a long discussion about exactly this. But let me just say two things. First and foremost, interest rates on the types of investments we have, while they're high relative to what we've seen, they're not really that high, and holistically speaking. And what I mean by that is we're talking about interest of 5%, 6%, depending on what the investment is. When you go back 15 or 20 years, interest rates were much, much higher, and obviously you go back to the 80s and they were out of control. Long story short, I think interest rates will come back down. I do not believe they were going to come back down substantially, nowhere near where we saw them even 3 or 4 years ago when people were borrowing money at 1%, 2%. So that being said, this number is wound back already from what we think this year will end at. We think this year we could end somewhere in the range of $1.75 to $2 million in interest beyond what we had budgeted. So this number is already kind of ratcheted back a little bit. And then that is why, now more specifically, it is why I said Heart and Homestead and Conservation and Heritage Program should be tied directly. The board should hold those two programs accountable. If interest income drops, I don't expect it's going to drop by more than $600,000, but if it does, those need to be the first two things that go. So either you're replacing them with general fund, as you said, or they're gone because the interest income's gone. That would be my recommendation. And those were our two hedges against your concern. Aaron, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah. More than appropriate use to that debt servicing, that makes perfect sense. The other question I have, so the health insurance savings, that $832K, is that in addition to the original budget where we had better network pricing and we saw approximate $500K savings then? Or so what are we talking about? Because we're self-insured, right? Yeah. So if we just had lower claims to date, that's great, but 1 or 2 nasty cases, severe cases of preemie will cost $1 million. So I'm just, again, want to make sure that we're being prudent and cautious because that pool could easily because we have a specific and aggregate, so whatever those amounts are, we have to pay up to those. Just want to make sure that we're being mindful of, this could go sour pretty quick.
Great question. Aaron, you want to get into the details there?
So the 800,000 is reflective of our ongoing structural savings in the health insurance fund. There's some use of reserve baked in there, but generally speaking, that 800,000 is reflective of what our broker tells us for the future.
Based on current trends.
Based on current trends and a projection for they factor market in. So not just our trend, but overall market trends as well, projected out into the future.
And there's two key things to keep in mind. One, those one or two cases that are $1 million, we actually have a couple of them as we speak. So we are cognizant of that. And two, our fund balance in this fund is very high, like too high. We need to bring it down even a little bit, still being mindful of the concerns that you have. So I think in this particular case with health insurance, we've got about probably 4 or 5 hedges, and then Aaron and Margie, which is like double hedges on the hedges. So that's said lovingly.
Okay.
So basically, we're giving taxpayers' dollars back to taxpayers.
That's exactly it. And employees' dollars back to employees.
Right.
Because they are paying a portion of that, 12.5%.
Okay. And since you kind of alluded to the homestead conservation heritage program and heart and homestead programming, so again, are those perpetual? Specifically the conservation heritage, that 150K. So year over year without any further action, the action tonight by the board will automatically move that AG fees into the conservation heritage program?
It would, yes. Effective for 2025, my recommendation for this board would be to actually pass independent resolutions in excuse me, in the calendar year 2025 that have a sunset clause similar to how we do the sales tax, so it's forced to come back up.
Well, you addressed my concern because in the past we've had separate resolutions, and that's a pretty significant commitment. Not that I'm opposed to it, but we all should be transparent, and I believe it should be a separate resolution. But since you brought it up, and I suspect our county chair, board chair likely will bring that up in a further meeting. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Supervisor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since this is my first budget adjustment resolution I've gone through, and everyone's, can you just touch on how this relates back to the biannual budget? Because if we would not be doing this tonight, would we still yearly, as a county, be readjusting the mill rate per se, based off of updated values? I'm trying to figure out how this is going to come into the math equation come whatever time of year we figure out the tax bills actually.
So from the taxpayer's perspective, if we don't approve this, we will overtax them by $150,000 based on what's proposed. From a county budget perspective, if we don't do this, you're going to end up with a budget surplus. Almost from the start, we know we'll end with a surplus of over $2 million. So it's basically trying to get us back to where we think we're going to be even and make sure that that tax rate is as low as it can possibly be. And our collections are only what we actually need.
Sure. No, so would our mill rate be changed? Does our mill rate change yearly?
It does, but
in a
it changes,
biannual budget, whether we do
Yes.
this or not.
It does, remember there's two components, pardon me for walking you through third grade math here, but the top is the levy, so that number that we're going to drop by 150 grand. The bottom is the property value countywide. That number changes every single year, no questions asked.
Okay, that's why I wasn't sure of it.
Yep.
That's constantly revolving.
Constantly.
Okay.
Well, as long as I've been here, that number has been growing. literally right prior to me getting here, that number was shrinking, the denominator. So as that's been growing, the tax rate has continued to drop, which is why, if you're gonna, I've given this presentation at board orientations, you can focus on the tax rate if you're worried about what is happening with tax bills, or you can focus on the tax levy if you're worried about the size of government. If you're reducing the tax levy, you're making government smaller. There's no questions asked. It's 100% what's happening, and that's what we're doing. I think for the sixth or seventh time since I've been here.
Okay. Oh, thank you. That helps.
Aaron, do you know what the tax rate will be?
Yeah, the tax rate will drop 7 cents to $1.51.
So to put that in context, when I became county executive, we talked about how awesome it would be if we dropped below $2 in my first term. Mm-hmm. And now we're like half joking, is it going to drop below $1 before my next term? And it's completely possible. We keep getting 50% increase in assessments, but it's why you can't look at tax rates, because it's literally government math.
And Supervisor Gallant.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I had one other question from a comment you made earlier, Executive Showman, about the COLA. You had indicated that area counties were about 3%. How does those counties and their total compensation program compare? Meaning, we had budgeted, 2% merit pool and 2% COLA, so
Correct.
This now would be arguably 5%?
Yes, and they're on par with that. They're in the old step and lane model, so generally speaking, whatever their COLA is plus 2%, they've all kept that model. Our 2%, so to speak, fluctuates based on performance, so it's more merit than it is step and lane. But it averages out roughly the same. We'll all kind of be in that 5%-ish range. What this will do is it'll keep us competitive in the 75th percentile, which is where we've placed the compensation plan. The middle tier, our biggest challenge at the county right now is not being in the 75th percentile. It's the length of our range. From the time you get hired to the time you max out, I think is the fastest you could do it is like 9 or 10 or 11 years. We really have to study and look at, can we condense that? But this will keep us competitive, and it'll keep us in that 75th percentile for the midpoint.
So maybe another way of stating it is all the effort that we went through over the last few years of revamping our compensation program and being in a point of attracting and retaining. If we weren't to do this, do we believe there would be attrition, increased attrition?
We are seeing it already in some positions, yes, because the workforce is getting so tight. You're seeing people, counties and private sector, rather than hiring people on the front end of their pay scale, they'll move them anywhere all the way up to the end, depending on their experience. So this will basically keep us status quo, which is why I kind of jumped to the next discussion of, do we need to consolidate the number of the size of the range that we have? Because that's really the next issue.
Okay. Thank you.
Supervisor Krieger-Gundrum.
I just want to make sure that I understand this too. The revenues, the levy reductions, those are based on real information that you have. So we'd really have the 2.44 million.
Correct.
And then the expenditures are ways in which, I'm guessing that I don't know exactly who determined where to spend it. But I guess if anybody had any objections, it might be if you objected to how you are spending those savings, because those savings are going to be real.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah.
You nailed it, 100%.
Okay, thank you.
I will take the credit or blame, whichever.
Whichever we prefer, okay.
Any other comments, discussion? Oh. Supervisor McCulick. Excuse my comment.
Aaron, I had a question for you. So in our general fund, we had in that basically like a 13 to 16%. Do I have that right? Basically, for short-term needs or for for short-term borrowings, things like that. And so the last I recall seeing that document from Margie, we were at sort of the upper end of that. Can you sort of, because that's always money that while we're talking about applying things to the levy, that was always one that I got concerned that, we gave ourselves a top end and then we went by it. And the point would be, why have it if we're not going to say, look, this is excess and we can return it to the levy. Could you sort of update us on that or share some information on that, please?
Sure. From the last time you had seen that report, we have spent that top end down a little bit. We had a couple of actions. A big one was the Samaritan action that was a few months back. You will be receiving a fund balance report next month. So I don't today have an exact number that I can share, but I can share with you that we've spent it down since you've seen it last.
So we're not past that top. I think the number was 16%. We're not past that anymore. We're down in the range where we, our goal range.
We're within our range. We've still got a small amount in that property tax relief fund that we've been talking about, but it is significantly less than the last time you saw that
Okay, and you
report.
said that's going to come out when?
That's next month's meeting. You'll have
Okay,
that.
great. Thanks a lot, Aaron.
Sure.
Just to be very transparent, though, when I mention these numbers, we're using $1.3 million on interest and investments. Again, it's about $500,000 higher is where we think we'll end this year. So while you'll get that report next month, you can pretty much take to the bank. By the end of the year, it's going to inflate quite a bit more. So I just don't want it to appear like it's some kind of bait and switch. Like, we fully anticipate that number is going to go up. And then also, in fairness, there's a number of big expenditures hanging out there. We talked about them just a minute ago with Samaritan. That'll help draw it down too. So just be cognizant. There's money on both sides of the ledger that is forthcoming.
Yeah, so that'd be for the next biennium if there was anything.
That's correct. Yep, exactly.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any further discussion? There being none, we'll vote electronically. This requires a 2/3 vote. Did you get Pam?
Mr. Chairman, can I just interrupt before you finish casting that vote? Because I want to be unequivocally clear about something. With the borrowing that is proposed here, if you do this and you don't borrow, you are overtaxing people by $1.2 million. So I just want to be very clear about it before you make that vote final. I would hate to do that to the taxpayers of this county. So we're trying to be fiscally responsible, and I also want to be transparent about that.
We're done. Hearing that, does anyone wish to change their vote? It passes unanimously. Next up is Resolution 37, authorizing the deposit and transfer of agricultural conversion fees from the general fund to Natural Resources Department for land preservation efforts. Motion and a second, please. Supervisor Schwab, Supervisor Toma. Any questions or, Supervisor Krebs. I can't can't turn it on because this thing wants to reboot.
My question is, what is an agricultural conversion fee? And have we been collecting them in the past, or what have they historically been or used for? I don't know anything about them.
This actually came forward from our county treasurer, who's not here to discuss it tonight. So, Josh?
I read up on it.
Is that a Jamie question? Go ahead.
In layman's terms, it's essentially a penalty that's assessed when a property that's currently zoned agricultural converts its use and is rezoned to housing or commercial or industrial property. So as an example, the Fair Park property that we acquired with the storage sheds on it that is currently has ag on it, should we convert that zoning to another use, we would be assessed a penalty fee for that. And currently, we collect 50% of the fee, and 50% of that penalty is given back to the town.
Is that for just a 4 or 5 year time period after the conversion, or is that a perpetual fee that's assessed?
It's a one-time fee.
It's a one-time fee? Okay. Thank you.
I could have answered.
Any further discussion? There being none, we'll vote electronically. This is also a 2/3 vote. It passes unanimously. I apologize, Supervisor Conrath. I didn't see you trying to get in on that. I know this is part of near to your heart. Resolution 38, conveyance of highway lands to the state of Wisconsin, Town of Polk, Village of Germantown. Motion and a second, please. Supervisor Shadron, Supervisor Vespalik. Mr. Schmidt can make an explanation if we need one. I think the packet explained it pretty well. Any questions? There being none, we'll vote electronically. This is a simple majority vote.
Mr. Chairman, I believe we're voting on resolution 39 on the distance.
Yeah, hold on one second. It's not.
Oh,
Okay, now you should be good.
so we'll start over again. Good catch, Supervisor Schwab. We're missing some votes. Can we tell who didn't vote? We're missing several votes, so we're checking who didn't. There we go. Passes unanimously. So now we'll go to Resolution 39, County-Aided Bridge and Culvert Replacement for the Town of Barton. Motion and a second, please. Supervisor Mary, Supervisor Hartwig. Any discussion? There being none, we'll vote electronically. This is also a simple majority vote. It passes unanimously. And on to Resolution 40, which is a grant application for surface water planning grant and aquatic invasive species prevention grant. This Supervisor Conrath? We need a second. Supervisor Bailey? Any questions on this? This is trying to get a grant to pay for a boat washing station at the boat landing on Little Cedar Lake. Supervisor Kelling.
Just want to make a quick statement. The thing is about, I was on the PRD for Big Cedar and Little Cedar probably a good 5 years ago. And one of Supervisor Conrad's constituents, Jeff Baldus, gave me a packet about this pressure washer for using it at Little Cedar. Little Cedar does have an invasive species, starry stonewort. It's something that's been going on for a while. They do a lot of hand pulls and stuff like that. And what happens is people pull their boat out and they might take that boat to a different lake, or, especially fishermen, fish aren't biting here, they'll move it over there. So the idea behind this pressure washer is that if it's there for them to use, they're likely to actually use it and spray the seaweed and stuff off the bottom of the boat to help not get contamination into our other lakes. So I'm really pleased that this has actually come to bear. It might have taken a while, but we got it there. So, and I hope you'll all support it. I think it's going to be a great thing for our lake. Thank you.
Further discussion?
Yeah, Supervisor Conrad?
Go ahead, Supervisor Conrath.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate Supervisor Kellen's comments too. Yes, I've served on the Little Cedar Lake PRD and Big Cedar too, and Big Cedar has been utilizing one of these pressure washers essentially for a couple of years, and most of the community too has embraced it. And Little Cedar, all their efforts, really to date, have been through volunteers for fighting aquatic invasive species, and I too have helped with those hand pulls that they all organize, and the community is truly invested in doing what they can to themselves, even if they, like I said, had to volunteer their own hours and sweat. So I greatly appreciate it, and so will the Little Cedar Lake PRD property owners, and really it benefits Washington County at large to help keep our lakes as protected as possible from aquatic invasive species.
Thank you. Any other discussion? There being none, we'll vote electronically. This also requires a 2/3 vote. Passes unanimously. Next up is Resolution 41, which is a grant application for county conservation aids. Motion and a second, please. Supervisor Brisbolic, Supervisor Troutner. Any questions or discussion? There being none, we'll vote electronically. This also requires a 2/3 majority. Passes unanimously. Our next item is Resolution 42, adopting the Heritage Trails Mountain Bike Plan. Motion and a second, please. Supervisor Kelling, Supervisor Mary. Discussion.
Supervisor Conrad?
Okay.
As first, I would like to thank Logan Bliss and the team for all their efforts on this, trying to meet with all the key stakeholders, the Milwaukee Bike Club, the disc golfers, and the local constituents, the citizens. Also, the town of Polk is involved in this, and our volunteer Slinger Fire Department. the Milwaukee Bike Club, yes, they have greatly improved the utilization of Heritage Park, and that has financially benefited to our sustainable park system, which is greatly appreciated. And they are a well-respected organization, and volunteering their own time and everything too, and investing in those bike trails. But my one concern is, yes, I believe in most of their plan, except for one section, the very northern section of the expansion of this, the Black Trail up in that very northern section because of the concerns of our constituents. I support, all the rest of it, and the skills areas and everything for the, for the younger bikers. That's, and being a past ski instructor and things, I do believe that areas in some specialty kind of recreational things specific for learning and training is highly valuable. But my ask is that I would be actually seeking an amendment to that plan to eliminate that very northern section expansion on the Black Bike Trail on the proposed plan. And I completely support the rest of it.
Thank you. Supervisor Schwab.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I looked at this, I went back and reviewed the presentation or the plan that was presented at the Land Use and Planning Committee. And as I looked at it, at first I was a little bit concerned because of just because of some of the safety issues. And then the more I thought about it, I think the fact that the Metropolitan Bikers Club actually brought up those safety concerns themselves lends them credibility. And in talking with our Director of Public Safety, Mr. Dave Sager, he explained some of the things and some of the precautions that they had taken, and those alleviated my concerns as well. In a society where so much of our world is bubble wrapped and it's hard to have any fun, I really like this because it gives thrill seekers a place to go, right? It's hard to find things, let alone publicly supported things, that thrill seekers can use in a relatively safe environment and just have some good, clean fun. And so I appreciate that Washington County Parks have brought this forward. The Land Use Planning Committee supports it as well, because I think it is the epitome of what we should be doing to help people have fun and enjoy themselves and just not be a bunch of namby-pamby babies all the time. I like this. This is a good thing. I fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree. I like this as well. It draws people to our parks. The only concern I have is with I know there can be issues here with dangerous stuff. I mean, people get hurt. What is our liability on this? And I think they're having a sidebar there, so I don't know if they can answer that yet.
I'll include Jamie in this eventually, but if you read the memorandum of the agreement between the Mountain Bike Club and us, there was essentially hold harmless from both sides.
Okay.
So,
I mean, we would have to still carry some kind of liability insurance or something too, right? Because it's on our property, but that's, just the specifics on that,
we'll
I guess.
get an answer from
If you could, that would be my only concern.
I can address that.
Sure.
We have went round and round about that exact topic. Because we're a park, we hold substantial recreational immunity through state laws. So from the county side, we have that in addition to our insurance, and there aren't any concerns from our county attorney. the Metropolitan Mountain Bikers also have insurance that we require them to hold, as well as we have some stringent volunteer waivers and things in place as it relates to when their volunteers are on the property or when they're doing work. So that's been a process, but Brad's coming back now, but there's been several discussions to that exact tune. And as you had already mentioned, it's a high risk activity.
Yes.
So I think that there is potential for all of those things, and so that is something that we've taken very seriously.
Awesome, thank you. I was just looking for the standpoint of the taxpayer protecting them, so thanks.
Okay, after a sidebar, are you formally making that amendment, Supervisor Conrath?
Yes, I would like to make an amendment to the plan where we, keep everything else except eliminate the expansion of those black trails up in that very, northern aspect. They still, the thrill seeking and everything else remains, all those training areas, but just that one section that is a big concern of our constituents.
Do we have a second to the motion?
Well, I'll second it for discussion purposes.
Okay. We have a second by Supervisor Krieger-Gundrum.
I just want everybody to know that that black trail, it is a black diamond trail, just like in skiing. It is the most dangerous. I don't think that we should eliminate it. I think we should move it. It happens to be just 20 feet from the property owners all the way around. There's 3 property owners affected, 2 in my district and 1 in Town of Polk. Well, they're both all in the Town of Polk, but one is in Supervisor Conrad's district. Their concern is one of the ladies has horses. She has been able to enjoy raising her horses and riding them, but her concern is that they become startled when people are, you can imagine what it's like. It's a dangerous. They jump and they loop-de-loop, and people yell, and the horses become startled. Her concern is her safety. Another resident was concerned that the black trail, actually the way it's designed at the moment, has the bikers looking into his bedroom. I don't think that was designed very well. I'm not opposed to expanding it or keeping a black trail. I think we ought to simply move it and send it back to the land use and planning to make those modifications. Because how would you feel if it was your property and all of a sudden you can't use your horses anymore? How would you feel if they're there and they ride at night, and they have big bright lights? And it's annoying, not just to the people, but to those horses. So I don't think that it's right for the county to be harming a property owner because we have the ability to probably beat them in court. But I'm not opposed to a black diamond trail. I just think we ought to move it away from their property. And I think it's great. I have relatives who do this very dangerous biking, and one relative who was injured very seriously, but she's right back to riding again. And I don't think I'm not sure if mamby-pamby was intended for the residents or for the bikers, okay? Because they have real valid concerns. And I wouldn't want it on my property. I wouldn't, 20 feet, how long is 20 feet? I think I didn't measure it off, but is this room 20 feet? Okay, so for how much is 20 feet? From me to John. Okay, from this side to that side is 20 feet. That's how close the trail is to their property line. That's pretty darn close. And in the first place, when the bike trail was designed, there wasn't a public hearing. When the complaints were made after it was built by the property owners, they contacted somebody at the state and they said, well, you should have made your concerns known at your public hearing. We didn't have a public hearing. They had no opportunity to speak. Had they may have moved that trail to another location. It's a huge park, folks. We can move it. And so I'm not sure what happens with her motion, other than the fact that I think the motion ought to be to go back to land use and planning.
No. I think Supervisor, Attorney Stern wants to get the wording right before we go too much further here.
So I'm going to earn my paycheck right now. So this is how it works. As the board's parliamentarian, we have a couple of things pending right now before the board. So I didn't want to be disrespectful and interrupt Supervisor Curie-Gundrum. So we had initially a motion to amend the resolution that's before the board. The way I heard it was essentially Supervisor Conrath would like to see the plan amended to remove a portion of the plan. So initially what we had, if you look at the resolution, it's Resolution 42. What I think you're looking for, and Supervisor Conrath can correct me if I'm wrong, on line 28, where it says supervisors that the Heritage Trails mountain bike plan is hereby adopted, my recommendation would be except for, and then whichever portion of that plan, I don't have the specifics, we could get that wording from the plan itself. So it would be except for such and such portion of the plan is how that amendment would read. Supervisor Curie-Gundrum seconded that, which clears it for debate, but then she appears to have made a motion to refer the plan back to committee. That particular motion needs a second, and if that motion is seconded, then the board here can debate whether or not there's any basis or reason to refer it to committee. That particular motion takes precedence over the amendment, so that motion would have to be voted on first. Whatever happens to that motion will then affect where we go from there. So throwing a lot at you, but that's from a parliamentary standpoint where we're at. If anybody would want to second that motion to refer to committee, that would have to happen at this point, and then you could discuss that. Mr. Chairman?
We have a second from Supervisor Bossert. Supervisor Kelling, did you want to speak to this in particular?
May I defer my time to Supervisor Bossert?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I want to make sure that I have a few things clear on this. And I did second to motion the committee because I think that's a better approach. I'm not sure I'm going to vote for that. In fact, I'm more likely to vote against it. But I think it's a better approach to do that than try to amend this plan from the floor. I think we found that out a couple years ago with the highway plan, that it's better to send it back to committee than to try to reinvent the plan on the county board floor. So that's why I made that second. But so I understand this correctly. In the packet, the document that's labeled Resolution 42 LUP packet, there's a map on page 14, and that shows a black trail in the northern portion. Is that the portion that we're discussing and that Supervisor Conrad's original motion was to eliminate?
Yes, so there is a black flow trail in phase 2 that shows up on page 14 of the plan. There's also a black single track trail in phase 4, which shows up on page 19, and I believe the way she had worded it originally, it would be the all trails map on page 21. It would actually be both of those, the way she had it currently worded, it would be both of those black trails, the one that show up in yellow on the future trails map.
Okay, so she'd be eliminating both of those. Okay.
That would be the point we would probably want to
Yeah.
seek clarification on which trail she was referring to. But she did say black trails in the northern portion of the park.
Yeah, can we get that confirmation from Supervisor Conrath?
Yes, the one that is, the most northern that, flows along the property lines, as Supervisor Gundrum too pointed out, the expansion of one would look directly into one of our property owners' bedrooms.
Yeah, so you're only really, so you're looking at the one on page 14 only, and not the one on page 19. Is that right?
Yeah, that is the biggest concern.
Okay. All right, sounds good. And then can I get a clarification from Supervisor Kelling, who chairs this committee? Was this concern brought up at the committee meeting? Or is this the first you're hearing it?
No, as stated in the packet or in the meeting notes, Supervisor Conrath did offer this as a motion to amend, and it failed due to lack of second.
Okay, so this was already addressed once at the committee meeting and it failed. So, yeah, that solidifies my view that I would be a no vote on amending this plan. Thank you.
Supervisor Krieger-Gundry.
I think that if you look at page 39 in the packet, you can see much more clearly where that black trail goes. It is almost right on top of the property line. The other one is, everything's a little fuzzy looking on it. But I believe that the motion that Supervisor Conrath made in committee was to eliminate it, not to eliminate it altogether. I don't believe I heard discussion about modifying it. And that's why I think it should be sent back to them so that they can thoroughly discuss it. Because I don't really think, I know I'm going to be repetitious, I'm sorry. I really don't think we should use the power of government to take away a private person's ability to use their property as they had in the past before we put in this trail. And if you look at the entire park, there's lots of room in there to modify that and take it away from the property line. 20 feet from me to John Shudrin away, pretty close to me. I had no idea it was really that close.
Can I make a comment?
I'm going to go first, if you'll excuse me. That particular area shares the area with disc golf, so it's not so simple as just moving the trail. But I agree with you that being that close to the property line might be a little much. I don't know how far the house is off the property line. And I don't know about you, but I have shades in my bedroom. So.
I know, but it's the horses that is the main concern. And then the other big concern was Slinger Fire Department has to go all the way through to get to the most dangerous part of the trail. And I have a relative who was severely injured on just such a trail. That is a concern that the Slinger Fire Department brought up. And I'm just going to bring this up. I'll ask it later again. I don't see anywhere what is the cost for Slinger Fire Department. I mean, they've had several trainings and all of that. They're not doing it for free, are they?
Is that a question that Mr. Seeger wants to take? We're kind of getting off the.
I know.
We should vote first on whether we're going to go back to committee on it or not. That would be a simple majority vote.
Okay, I have one comment. I'm going back to committee.
Point of privilege. I think Supervisor Kelling's.
Yeah, Supervisor Kelling is up first. Sorry.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it would be fruitless to send it back to committee. And I'll tell you, I have never worked harder on any one thing than I have this particular project. I've been to the park 7 times. I went screaming down the trail on a mountain bike. I talked to the people at the park. I've talked to the neighbors. Everything that you've seen, if you watched that committee meeting, and I hope most of you have, it was quite extensive. It went on for quite a while, and it covered a lot of topics, including the objection that Supervisor Conrath and Supervisor Gundrum have. So I really don't think that it would really change anything. I mean, they could probably get it to negotiate it out or something, but I believe that the rest of the committee felt very comfortable with where we were at, because, they did not state any objection otherwise. And they certainly had the opportunity to motion our second Supervisor Conrath's motion. So there's a lot more I would like to speak about this, but I'll reserve that for the main body of it. But I really urge you not to send it back to committee. Let's deal with this tonight. It's been done in committee. It's been totally researched. It's been talked to death. It's time to start moving ahead. Thank you.
Supervisor Shadrin, is your comment specific to this?
Yeah, I'll make it short and sweet. Unfortunately, I would agree to send it back to committee if there's some concerns on it yet. So I understand it's been hashed out again, but to take another look at it if there's concerns with the public, I'm not opposed to that. So thank you.
Supervisor Krebs.
I think Supervisor Conrath was ahead of me.
Oh, thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just I comment about bringing it back to committee per Supervisor Gundrum's recommendation to, and maybe adjusting it. I did speak to the chair of the bike club also these last couple of weeks, and he was open to adjusting that bike trail, that black one in particular. He said that what we have on paper is conceptual, but I said it's still what we have on paper and what we have to, technically approve to vote on. And so that is, concerning to vote on something that he is considering, conceptual. But so he, in particular, the owner of the bike club, was open to adjusting that and, taking into consideration the landowner's concerns. He was not aware of, say, like the bedroom issue in particular. So I just wanted to share that with you all also.
Thank you. Supervisor Krebs?
That conversation was in between the planning committee and now this board meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speaking to the amendment, I'm on that committee, and I don't want it to come back to this committee, so I will not be supporting the amendment.
I'll add a little bit of comment too. I drove around that whole area again today, and it's bad on the horses because the field right next to her has a snowmobile trail across it. So if you think bikers are going to bother those horses, if we get snow this year, it's not going to be good. So further discussion. There being none. Oh. Last word.
One thing that I do want to try, because I think we might be on 2 different pages here between the motions. The original that Pam spoke of is an add-on black trail to what is existing. What Supervisor Krieger-Gundrum is talking about is the Double Dragon Trail as a whole. So I think we need to clarify what we're talking about here.
Good point. Supervisor Krieger-Gundrum.
I'm going to get my 2 cents in.
That's all you get, 2.
Okay. The idea that the committee says, we're not going to change it no matter what the board says. I find it to be appalling. I think to say, I think saying that we're going to disregard it is not really a good thing.
Fair enough. Supervisor Schwab.
Mr. Chairman, I was going to remind where we are in this process. Right now, the only thing we're voting on is whether it returns to committee. Please call the question.
If you're going to call the question, you need a second and a two-thirds vote.
If we're moving to call the question, we need a second and two-thirds vote. We have a second from Supervisor Gallitz. Do we do that electronically?
Yeah.
We'll vote on that electronically.
Call the question.
Yeah.
Call the question simply means to end the debate on this issue, and then you'll vote on the
Correct.
motion to refer to committee.
Did you have a?
My exact.
Yeah, it's to have the vote on the motion to return it to committee.
Okay,
So it's.
we've called the question.
17-3.
17-3.
The debate ends on this motion, and I vote on the motion to refer to committee.
So now we'll vote on the motion to refer back to committee. And this is a simple majority.
Correct.
That was to call the question.
So this is the one to send it to.
Yes.
Point of order.
Yes, sir.
Only to clarify which way we're voting, that yes would be to send it to committee, no would be to not send it to committee.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So who made the motion? It was Lois to send it back?
Supervisor Bossert, second.
Bossert.
Yeah.
All right. Ready, when you are.
Ready to vote electronically? Okay.
One more person needs to vote.
We're missing one vote.
Okay, we have it now. Okay, so,
We are not sending it back to committee.
so 8 yeses.
Eight yeses, 12 noes. So now we go to
Return to
the amendment.
the amendment, yes.
Point of order.
Yes, sir.
Again, I asked for clarification as to the motion that Supervisor Conrad has on the floor to clarify which trail, and then also clarification to Supervisor Krika-Gundrum as to whether she motioned originally to the additional trail or the full black trail, in which case it was improperly motioned.
It wasn't improperly motioned. You can make a motion to refer to committee, it's always in order.
No,
Yeah.
not on that. On the original amendment that she proposed, she was talking about a trail that has yet to be added, a future expansion.
She seconded the motion. I believe you seconded the amendment, correct?
I did.
Which she did, and then she made a separate motion to refer the plan back to committee. That is in order.
When she spoke on the second, she started talking about.
Supervisor Kelling, that's in order. You can always make a motion to refer to committee. She seconded Supervisor Conrad's motion initially to amend to open up the floor to discussion, then made a separate motion to refer to committee the plan. So that is in order.
So then, again, I would ask, is the original amendment to just the add-on trail or eliminating double drag?
And that's for Supervisor Conrad to answer.
It's the add-on trail in the new plan. The that I am seeking not to be added. Give them everything else, just, like you're, whatever, a kid or you ask for something, right? You shoot for the stars. We're giving them everything else that they've asked for in their big conceptual design, except that additional black trail up in that northern aspect. That is the biggest concern of our constituents, and that runs close, to the bedroom and closer to those horses.
Might it be appropriate just when that trail is contemplating being built, which is a few years down the road, that we put a stipulation that they work with that property owner and satisfy them? I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but a friendly amendment that way might have a better chance of passing.
That sounds very diplomatic, because like the bike owner or the president of the bike club did say that was conceptual, and he is open to moving it. It wasn't, aware of like all the concerns, but some of them. But I told him of my concerns of, voting on something conceptual and having it stick, and not, making it sound like we're not hearing the voice or respecting the voice of our constituents.
What do you think about that?
I'm not a fan, but it's good.
So, yeah, actually what you recommended, Chair, that sounds
Everybody has to agree.
appropriate.
Otherwise, you've made a second amendment to her amendment.
Yes.
If she's modifying her amendment, do I need to approve the modification as giving the seconds?
She can't modify her amendment because once the amendment is made and seconded, it belongs to the board. So the board would have to approve of her to withdraw that amendment.
So I believe the proper thing to do here is to vote on the original amendment, and if it fails, then offer a different amendment.
You can do that.
Is that, any discussion on that? Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, just, trying to be respectful of our constituents.
Are you ready?
This is just her original motion to amend.
Her amendment, yes.
Yeah.
Can you reread the motion?
You have the wording, sir.
So this would be an amendment to 2024 Resolution 42, line 28. Supervisors, that the Heritage Trails Mountain Bike Plan is hereby adopted except for, and then I believe Supervisor Conrath identified which portion of the plan that is. I don't know that there's an exact designation in the packet or how that technically is worded, but we would insert that portion of the plan in that blank spot. I don't know if Ms. Ludovic has a designation she can give us that makes it official for purposes of the amendment.
14.
But
But
hereby
to clarify,
adopted-
there is also a black single track trail lower.
So it's hereby adopted except for,
The black flow trail in phase 2.
okay.
Is everybody clear on what we're voting on now? You got the wording?
Some of it, yeah.
So we'll vote electronically. Yes, allows the amendment. No, overturns it. Supervisor Schwab.
I appreciate the consideration, Mr. Chairman. As we've talked about this, there's a couple things that, with regard especially to this amendment, have not been demonstrated. We have not demonstrated that we would be harming the property owners. It's their opinion that they would, but the fact that they've enjoyed the tranquility and peace and quiet of being next to a park for many years doesn't deprive the property owner adjacent to them from building up their property as they see fit. Nor has it been demonstrated that the topography of the park will allow for moving that trail as easily as some on this board seem to think it will. Also, I would agree with Chairman Schleif. Where I live, it's pretty common that I draw my bedroom shades when I'm in my bedroom and doing anything that I want to do in private, right? Furthermore, as we look at saying that the county shouldn't deprive a property owner of their rights, and we haven't demonstrated that we would, nor should the individual property owner deprive the county and the rest of its constituents of the full use and best use of that property. So I speak against the amendment. If someone wants to work with the builders of that at some point in the future, that may be a very good thing. But as it is, to eliminate that huge section of trail, I think would be a detriment to the whole plan. Thank you.
Any further comment? Supervisor Conrath.
Yes. Thank you. I do appreciate those comments. But again, too, you know, when you make a plan, the Milwaukee Bike Club, they're shooting for the stars on this. They have a grand plan, and sometimes you don't quite get everything you seek. And we are giving them everything else and highly respect what they have done for that park, thus saying yes to everything else. But yes, there are safety concerns too from the Slinger Fire Department. Their calls have gone up from, it was essentially like 3 over 3 years to about 13 this last year. And they have done extra trainings and things too, which are needed for that bike trail. And
thank you. Supervisor Kelling.
Okay, and I don't know. I definitely didn't want to get off on this. Mr. Schwab, Supervisor Schwab, thank you for those comments. I think they're very appropriate and very accurate. The comment was made that we put out this wish list and we don't always get what we want. Well, I can tell you this: I negotiated on this. Okay, they didn't get everything they want because I made sure they didn't get everything they want. The disc golf guys wanted a bunch of stuff. The mountain bike trail guys wanted a bunch of stuff. They weren't working together. I took both of them, sat them down and said, look, this is how it's going to be. We're going to work together. You're not going to get all you want, and you're going to make this happen, or there will be no plan. If you doubt me, ask Ms. Ludwig. She will say to that. So understand that this was a very well thought out plan. Metro Mountain Bikers has invested a ton of money into this plan, and already what's existing, and would like to do more. They'd like to raise funds. They'd like help. There's a million things still going on with this park. But I would also point out to this that this park has been #1 in growth and the driving force for permits to support all of our parks. So the trail that we're building today and tomorrow and in the future, that draws more and more people. I'd point out in October, 4,764 cars came into Heritage Park. In October, an off month. They weren't there primarily for Frisbee golf. Okay, they were there for the mountain bike trails. This is a huge economic boon for all of our parks. And this is what our constituents, all 136,000 of them, would like for us to do. We said we're going to take the parks off the tax levy. We said we were going to make the parks self-sustaining. This park has no other amenities. It doesn't have a lake. It doesn't have a beach. It doesn't have a barn. Okay? All it has is its beauty and its topography. And its topography and beauty just happens to lend itself to a lot of adventure. And that's what I see as a vision for this park. And that vision is already proving itself right now by the amount of dollars that it brings in, the amount of people that come to that park. It is the best utilization of that park that we have, and it's working. And that's supporting all the other dog parks and beaches and boathouses and ranger cabins and all the rest of the things that we do. It all comes from this park, a lot of it, big chunk of it. And I want to keep that flow going. So let's not do the amendment. Let's go through on this original project. Let's listen. Let's take care of our 138,000 constituents. Thank you.
Okay. Yes. You're speaking to the amendment? If you're not speaking to the amendment.
I wanted to ask about the cost of the fire department.
Okay. First of all, that's off base, and second of all, if we've got 4,000 cars in a month and we've only had 13 emergency calls, that's a pretty good record. So let's go forward on the amendment.
On the amendment, I'm sorry.
Thank you. So we're going to vote on the amendment. Yes, you agree with the amendment. No, you do not. We have 3 yes, 17 no. The amendment fails. Shall we go on with the original?
Now, was it appropriate to ask that question?
The safety question?
No, about the cost of the Slinger Fire Department. Because they have training. I've been seeing a lot of training and.
I don't know that affects us. We've heard talk about this trail, but they've got to have calls on the Ice Age Trail all the time too. Who pays for that? You know, I don't think that should be a consideration. But I do know that Dave Seeger's been working with the Slinger Fire Department towards some amicable end. So, if you would like to speak,
Yeah, I'd appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman, I can speak to it if you so choose.
That's off agenda. So. Just been told, so
I can
sorry.
speak with you after.
Okay.
So now we'll go back to the original resolution adopting the bike trail plan. It's a simple majority. Oh, Mr. Krebs, you okay?
One more person needs to vote.
Yeah, you don't have presence, so I voted.
It's you.
Oh. There.
Okay. Yeah, it passes 18 yeses, 2 noes.
It passes 18-2. Our last item is Ordinance 4, speed zones on county trunk highways, specifically County Trunk Highway S in between R and 175. Motion and a second, please. Supervisor Schultheis, Supervisor Shadron. Any discussion? Supervisor Krebs, are you still? Okay, you can speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick question for Scott on the 24-hour speed checks that you guys did. Was your equipment calibrated right? There's a 78 mile per hour one in there, or was that the neighbor running it up?
With our data, you'll see there's always a chance for a glitch in it.
because it's pressure tubes. So it depends on if there's a certain vehicle driving a certain direction, another one hitting the other direction, like perfectly. There's the opportunity for that.
Okay.
It's certainly, someone could have been going 78 miles an hour. I wasn't out there to say, but very challenging to get up to that speed unless you blew one of the stop signs going that direction. So
There was just those one from 55, 65, and 75. Everything else was more consistent.
correct. Yes, it's actually very good data if you look at it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Consistent data.
Supervisor Vospalik.
I may have just saw it, but this clarification on here, line 26 speaks about 45 miles an hour. In the packet, it said 35 miles an hour. What we wanted to reduce it to, I just wanted to see where it said reduce it to 35 in the resolution, just to make sure that we have it correct. I saw 45 in there, line 26.
Yes, a great observation, and thank you for bringing that up. What it amounted to is that if you look at the speed data that Supervisor Krebs mentioned, generally speaking, most of the traveling public is going around 35 miles an hour. 35 miles an hour was the request of the public that is there. By state statute, this body can drop a county highway speed limit from 55 down to 45 on its own. Going down any lower than that requires the state of Wisconsin to approve that. We've gotten regional approval from Southeastern Wisconsin district approval. It's now in the hands of Madison to see if they're going to allow us to go down to 35 miles an hour. Brad and his team did a great job of doing the resolution that if you go to 45, if that's all the state allows, we'll go to 45. If the state allows us to go to 35, then we'll go ahead and put 35 on there. So what you're doing is you're voting for, if the state approves it, 35 miles an hour. If they don't, then you would be dropping it to 45.
So the purpose of this resolution is to go from 55 to 45?
No, you would, the purpose resolution, I'd let Brad speak to this too, but is to go to 55 to 45. But if the state allows us to go to 35 because it's in their hands, then we would go all the way down to 35.
Okay.
Is what you're approving.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Any further questions or comments?
Yep,
Oh, go
Supervisor
ahead, Pam.
Conrad. Thank you. Yeah, I would like to thank Scott Schmidt for looking into this, and again to is a safety concern and that speed limit and concern raised by our citizens. So I greatly appreciate his efforts, and then I was partnering to work with the state to explore this and to hopefully bring it all the way down to 35. That takes extra effort. Thank you.
Any further discussion? There being none, we'll vote electronically. This is a simple majority vote. It passes unanimously. Our next meeting is Wednesday, December 11th at 6 p.m. I can't talk anymore. This meeting's adjourned.